Okay, so I'm sure you guys have all missed my Blue Review show. Um, I've been kind of wrapped up with the music segments and various and sundry other things. But I've got a lot of plans ahead for some Blue Review episodes as well as more music and um, quite a bit more of other things, but I won't reveal them yet. Uh, so I don't think I've done one since the Showa era Criterion box Godzilla that our great patron Tim Tolbert gifted me with. So I'm back today, and I've decided to kind of follow on in this vein for a little bit longer. Not an unboxing. I don't have anything to unbox right now. Um, I have a story about that in a minute, um, but I want to do some of my sets, like a whole series of films or uh, several films by the same director in a set. So I have some nice sets like that that I've not discussed yet on here. Maybe a title or two out of some of them, but none of them in a full fledged manner. And I have a couple that are out of print, and so I wanted to talk about one today. But first, I was going to mention that on Facebook, of course, there was some discussion of um, people who do videos like mine, and then one of the film groups I'm in, and this cat said that we were kind of the lowest of the low. We didn't know what we were talking about. We couldn't string a sentence together to save our life, and that unboxers were the absolute bottom of the barrel here, like the scum of the earth. So I was taken back by that, but I didn't reply. Anyway, um, I'm gonna go ahead and get into this. This is the fun one I picked up. I used to work at this record store called Manifest Records, which is about a mile from my house where I live now. And, you know, um, it was kind of an awful place to work, but it was a fun store. And I'd get a hold of some interesting things that would come through. A lot of collectors would uh, divest themselves of their vinyl collections and CD collections and DVD uh, and Blu-rays. Back then, Blu-ray hadn't peaked yet. I had just got a player, so I didn't have a whole lot, and I dreaded replacing all the ones I had if I could do that even. Um, but I found this one for $40, which I think was at least half off of the standard retail price. It was used, and one thing is Manifest has extremely high prices. They sell mostly used Blu-rays. This is true of DVDs and CDs as well. But the few times I shop in there now and rarely buy anything, I can afford to. Uh, I noticed like their used Blu-rays, their used prices are invariably the exact same as the standard retail price of the new unopened, sealed copies that I see on websites like Amazon and such. So either the Amazon price, which is cut down from the SRP standard retail price, or even higher to the standard retail price. So if you want to get a used Criterion Collection edition that standard retail price is 40, and you can get it for 30 on Amazon, you can get it used at Manifest for 30. Yeah, I know. Anyway, this is back in the days when there was a little logic applied to some of their pricing. This thing's not in perfect condition. I didn't buy it in perfect condition, and that might be one of the reasons the price wasn't as high. Um, but I think it's not one of a kind, but I don't think it's being made anymore. And made early in the days of Blu-ray. and it contains all the films in a series that is one of my favorite film series ever. One of my favorite science fiction properties. One that I think has been, since these films, been handled very poorly, sometimes mediocre to poorly, sometimes abominably, sometimes almost offensively. Um, we'll get into that later. But I think these five films are kind of a masterwork. So uh, let's get into it. This is kind of a little trick, kind of gimmicky cover here. So tell me if you can see this. Well, you can't tell me. This is Planet of the Apes, 40-year evolution. So this came out on Blu-ray in 2008. So yeah, it was an early Blu-ray release. Um, so it has this kind of, I'm gonna pin this here so I can do this a little easier. So this thing, so you've got Cornelius right here, character, and the rocket ship. This is all kind of embossed and two-dimensional rocket ship that's sticking out of the lake that it crashed in on the Planet of the Apes. And then you kind of open this thing up. So there you go. Ape shall never kill. Sorry about that. Yeah, this is a giant book. The actual container here with the rocket ship really isn't much fancy. It's got a title on the spine. If you can read that, yeah, and the back is just plain. So okay, and like I said, it has like some tears and things on it, so it wasn't in mint condition. But this book is golden, man. Ape shall never kill ape. And then here's the back cover with profiles of various kinds of apes that are on the Planet of the Apes. So what happens when you open this thing? Well, that's a trip because it's a book within a book. Um, it's a whole giant fold-out mechanism here. So when you first open it, you have this timeline. So this is a timeline of the Apes movies. And it starts in 1972 AD. So that's the beginning. Now, of course, the first movie came out in 1968. The novel, La Planète des Singes, Planet of the Apes, or Monkey Planet by Pierre Boulle came out, I think, 64 or 5-ish. I have read that when I was very young. It's incredible. So yeah, there's the whole timeline across here. And basically what it does is it helps to explain the time paradoxes that occur throughout the series, which as a kid, that was one of the things that excited me most about, because I was into science fiction and time travel stories from a very young age. And so this kind of future history, or what Doug mentioned, the Planet of the Apes Marvel magazine, comic magazine called Future History Chronicles, that's kind of what it displays here, and has key events and key years. Because basically in this reality in 1972, a spaceship launches with a 4-person crew: Taylor, Landon, Dodge, and Stewart. And we go kind of forward, and we go forward, along the timeline chronologically, but the happenings are revolving around beings that have come from the future timeline. So we go up to when Taylor lands in this reality in 2673 AD. And shortly after that, well, it's interesting. No, 2673 is when he transmits his last record to Earth. My apologies. 11,000, 11,300. Is this correct? No, it's not. Oh, 11 is the point before it. My bad. I haven't read this in a while. 3954. So it's almost 300 years after he signs off and goes into hypersleep or suspended animation. They land on the Planet of the Apes in the year 3954 AD. And then events happen over the next couple of years. And then, essentially leading to yes, leading to the events of 3955, in which the world is destroyed. But the three apes escape and go back in time to 1973 AD. And here lies the paradox, because this stuff would have never happened in the future if the apes from the future had not gone back to the past and made this happen. So it's an amazing work, I think. I mean, and very intelligent writing. French poet Paul Dane wrote most of the series, but of course the first film was written by Michael Wilson with major input. Maybe it should be Rod Serling with Michael Wilson instead of vice versa, but not sure what Michael Wilson did. I am pretty apprised of what Serling's major contributions were, such as the twist ending. But you couldn't have asked for a better writer, there in the late 60s for this kind of material than Rod Serling. So this thing opens up into a very kind of big and dramatic item here. So here's what it looks like, just the actual. I could stretch this whole thing out. So there you've kind of seen the front, back, and the timeline, both sides. So let me open this up. On the other side of the timeline, we have the discs, some of them. And then over here, in the middle, there's a place for another book, which I'll put back in a minute and show you. There's the other two discs. So these are the 5 films in the series. And for those who have been sleeping for the last millennium, like Taylor, the films are Planet of the Apes, Beneath the Planet of the Apes, Escape from the Planet of the Apes, Conquest of the Planet of the Apes, and Battle for the Planet of the Apes. These are filled with special features, and this was the early days of Blu-ray sequencing and programming. So a lot of the little things you do with the menu and things you land upon to highlight, do it in kind of weird ways, and kind of this pseudo high-tech kind of robotic click 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 thing, which was de rigueur in those early days for these kind of movies on Blu-ray. Making the menus and such like real sci-fi tech oriented, like the X-Men. The first X-Men movie is kind of the same way with its menus, the first edition of it. On Planet of the Apes, each of these discs has enormous amounts of bonus material. The first disc is truly amazing, because not only does it have audio commentaries, several audio commentaries, and a text commentary. It has an adventure game in the Forbidden Zone, Science of the Apes interactive bonus view, public service announcement for ANSA. That was the fictional organization, get it, ANSA, NASA, that was kind of behind the technology that sent the Starship with Taylor out in the first place. The evolution of the apes, impact of the apes, just stuff about how the movie was developed, how it came to be, and then the impact it's had culturally and creatively. And then it also has Behind the Planet of the Apes. Now, Behind the Planet of the Apes is a feature-length documentary that, in the original CD set, it was the 6th disc, and it also even had a double disc version on CD of its own. So this one has the entire thing just as an extra on Planet of the Apes. So you get 2 features on here, not to mention all these tons of extras. So like there's makeup tests, trailers, and all kinds of art galleries. Pretty much everything that you'd want to see. The interactive press book, advertising, lobby cards, makeup, costume design, sketches, props, behind the scenes. Man, also dailies and outtakes. The original makeup test with Edward G. Robinson as Zaius and Heston as Taylor. These are all so fascinating and really, show the evolution from Boole's novel to the product that came out in '68 that kind of revolutionized, in my opinion, revolutionized film science fiction. At least probably 2001 more so in the same year did. But the Apes spawned like a whole series. It was a franchise. So it was kind of like the Godzilla series, or the James Bond series. It was an ongoing series of thinking person's science fiction spawned out of this one beautiful novel. So the other discs all have their own numerous extras. Some of the notable ones Beneath the Planet of the Apes. There is Ape News Gallery. That's very strange. There's lots of galleries on that one. Escape from the Planet of the Apes. Featurettes, trailers, and galleries. Conquest of the Planet of the Apes. Now, one thing I want to make sure everyone knows here is that, especially older people ancient people like my age, who saw Conquest of the Planet of the Apes perhaps first on television in the late 1970s. Conquest of the Planet of the Apes that's in this set is the now official version. It's the original director's cut. It's not the version that we saw in the theater. Well, I didn't see it in the theater. It was not the version that was in the theater in the 70s. It was not the version, same version, a little edited, that we saw on television in the late 70s. It has different footage. It has a different ending, mainly. Very different ending. And it's considered now the definitive version. So you've got a generation of people who've picked up on the DVD box set from the early 2000s up to this, and whatever other iterations of the total film series on home video have as the definitive version. I'm very happy with that. So that was not going to be a PG movie. It was going to be an R movie. As it is, it's pretty violent for a PG movie. But Planet of the Apes was a G movie. And it has violence, profanity, and some nudity. But it was G. See how much the ratings have altered over the years. So yeah, in the Conquest, actually this Conquest of the Planet of the Apes, it has that official unrated version. That's the one you want to watch. But you can go back and watch the theatrical version that we saw as kids too. That's on here also. There are all kinds of things, same things, galleries, trailers, and Riots and Revolutions Confronting the Times featurette, which that's interesting because one of the people who does an audio commentary on the text commentary on the Planet of the Apes disc is Eric Green, author of Planet of the Apes as American Myth. I have that book and it's amazing. He goes through the entire everything from the novel up through the films to the cartoon to the comic books to the latter day iterations. I think it came out before the Tim Burton Planet. It did. It came out before the Tim Burton Planet of the Apes. So it's everything that's related to the original apes, because the Tim Burton Planet of the Apes kind of gave a new generation a whole different set of apes movies. I mean, it did not spawn direct sequels, but later there was a series that was made possible by it. The interest in it. Um, so then you get into Battle of the Planet of the Apes. This has two versions also. So there's the theatrical version, but there's an extended version, and I don't think it's because of controversial material like in Conquest. I think it's just maybe a re-edit by J. Lee Thompson, but I could be remembering that wrong. Featurettes, trailers, San Simeon Sentinel Gallery. I guess that's what the newspaper. Interactive press books, galleries. So this is something interesting about this set. This is something that you have to treat this thing very gingerly, because this kind of faux marble background here, or stone, monument thing, it doesn't have plastic clips that you can affix the discs to, so they won't come out. Instead, it has these strange little round, I may not be able to do this, these strange round globules of glue. It looks like glue. It's not plastic, it's glue. It's kind of rubbery. So what I did is I took off this one. Oh no, it has a tiny little, it has some tiny little hairs on it. No. Okay, beautiful. Okay. So anyway, that's the first one, Planet of the Apes. Can you read that? There you go. And set this down. And so what I did is I took it off of this thing like this. Sorry if you can't see this stuff. This is kind of awkward. But I'm doing my best, guys. One. So that's film one, and it's got the little rubbery glue thing in the middle. So now reaffixing this, it's kind of a bear to get it completely lined up. And you have to kind of get it exactly lined up and then twist it around, not to where you want to turn it around hard so you scratch your disc, but there. And now it's reaffixed. So, it's pretty fancy, huh? So anyway, inside, there is the third tier of this thing. I'll put it back together when this is done. Same cover as the slide out kind of tactile cover. Same back cover as well. So this is a book, and this book, it's 40-year evolution, the Planet of the Apes, and you can see the famous filming of the famous ending of the first film. And I have not dived deep into this before. Here are the original American movie posters for all 5 films. I have not dived into this a lot, but it's kind of interesting because first it has a little feature on science fiction film and how it developed and how Planet of the Apes was spawned out of that. Of course, it has a lot of fun behind the scenes photos. They're smiling. Of course, in the movie, they're not smiling. They're captives. And some original artwork, envisioning this world that these Earthlings find themselves on, and deal with the makeup evolution. James Chambers did this revolutionary makeup job, which really kind of sold the whole thing. And several people have said, if the makeup had not worked, if people had laughed at it, then the movie would never have come together. It would have either not been made or it would have totally flopped. So quite the opposite happened. So again, there's tons of nice stills from the movie. And as far as prose goes, it's just basically detailing the filming. Here's some more designs. Now, in the novel, the apes live in a city like, modern day, mid 60s, I guess Paris, because that's where BLU was from. But it's a large city like Paris, London, New York. And they dress like humans in our world of that time. So they decided to go for a more primitive thing in this way. Even though the apes are intelligent, their world is a little more natural. It's got huts and like houses that are hewn out of rock and concrete. And they have guns, for instance, but they're semi-industrialized, but not heavily industrialized. Their technology is, probably like ours was maybe in the 18th century, perhaps, or earlier, maybe a little earlier. So this has a lot of cool stuff. And as we go on, we show the phenomena of the ape thing and the discussion of a sequel, and more designs for the future installments. And really, this kind of thing goes on for God knows how many pages, like 500 pages. No, it's like 150 pages. But here is a really cool design painting for Conquest of the Planet of the Apes. This kind of resembles the modern film series, which the first installment, and first two really, but especially the first, they are remakes of Conquest of the Planet of the Apes. And they don't wear clothes, just like in these pictures. Now, in the actual movie Conquest, the apes do wear clothes. They've just started wearing clothes, and they've just started becoming intelligent. And there you have, they kind of have their riot and revolution. And of course, Eric Green in Planet of the Apes as American Myth discusses how this is a allegory for racial revolution, which was kind of in the air at that time. Just some amazing and remarkable stuff. So it covers kind of the whole shebang, the legacy of the apes. So it's got like parodies, like Mad Magazine parodies of Planet of the Apes, and who knows what else. It has any of the Marvel comics. Props, special props, makeup, more props. Got to give props to all the right people, right? The outfits. This stuff is amazing. The lovely Nova, Linda Hamilton, who was dating the producers in it. This is just beautiful here. And I think a lot of this stuff is also in the picture galleries on the discs themselves. So really a little bit of everything. The collar that held Taylor. So what a book. Okay, so I'm going to try to put this thing back together, and then I just want to talk a little bit about the series, and then I'm going to let you guys get back to whatever else you're doing, or whatever other YouTube channels that you're watching. So let me see. Putting this thing back in, this might be interesting. This might be the first time I've ever taken it completely out, so I don't want to tear the thing. It's slightly torn anyway. Yes, it is slightly torn here. And that may be another reason why I got it cheaper. I don't know if you can see that, but the seam there is torn. So I think the book is meant to be able to be slid out of this kind of thick cardboard, kind of like black paper. Yeah, but it obviously didn't work. I've never torn it because I've never taken it out. So I guess I bought it torn. But anyway, hope not didn't make it worse. So I put the book back. I fold over the last two movies. Fold over the beginning of the timeline on the cover. Shall never kill ape. And then we can slide this thing back into its little cradle, which is damaged, but damn it, like I said, $40. I get this 20 in 2014. I know it's out of print. I'm almost certain. I'll have to look it up and research. So, you know, in hindsight, maybe I didn't get a good deal, but I cherish it. I think all the extras and bonuses, it's really a comprehensive artifact if you're a fan of this series. So, not many people don't know what the Planet of the Apes is or was. The film series, like I've said before, was based on a famous French science fiction novel by Pierre Boulle, who also wrote Bridge over the River Kwai, which was made into a really acclaimed film. Also, probably not as many changes made to it as to Planet of the Apes. For the film, Rod Serling and Michael Wilson, the way they adapted it, besides the thing I was talking about the technology and the look of the cities, the main character, it was named Ulysses Maru. He was a Frenchman. They changed him to an American, George Taylor, who played by Charlton Heston. And Nova's the same character, Cornelius, Zera, Dr. Zaius, all the ape characters. I cannot remember the name or names of Maru's crew. I have not read the novel in a long time. I would like to own a copy of it. It's on my long list of old books to get on eBay one day. So the movie is a phenomenon. It was really, you know, it was amazing. It was a big hit, and Charlton Heston did not want to come back for a sequel. He thought it would be, you know, the law of diminishing returns by doing you know, endless series and, you know, of adventures. And I guess he probably didn't foresee what they ended up actually doing, because what he probably foresaw was just adventure after adventure on the Planet of the Apes with a status quo, you know, no progression of storyline like in series were back then. Like he compared it to like the Andy Hardy series or whatever of his youth. But yeah, exactly like that. You know, the Thin Man movies and you know, all the kind of series films, you know, Mr. Moto, Charlie Chan, and all the way to James Bond, you know, and you've got the reset button is punched at the end of each film, and so you begin again, and Bond has a new girlfriend, and he's forgotten the one that got killed, and he's just off to another adventure. Now, some people like this kind of serialized pulp adventure. I have some good friends who like it. I have some friends who write it. Myself, it's not my favorite. It's not the stuff I write or particularly read in general or follow. I tend to follow long form storytelling. I've said that many times on this channel. I grew up on Marvel Comics when there was a continuity. I grew up on soap operas, and then came Twin Peaks, and then came cable, and these adult shows, long form storytelling that are kind of production values of a film that are really superior to a film because you can really, the story can breathe. You know, film, you've really got to nail it in a couple of hours. I think it's promising, and the work that I've been writing, Flicker Street, for 30 years is the same way. It goes on and on, but characters live, characters die, characters change. And, you know, I just finished the series Breaking Bad. That's a great example. Over 5 years, there's an arc of a man who changes externally and internally over and over again through different phases. And, you know, it's a complete body of work because it traces him from the beginning of his transformation to his death. The Apes movies, they progressed also, and that's something I really liked. They were not just single unit adventures like Heston was dreading. Not to say Heston would have or should have stayed in the series, because even though he's the star of the first movie, he's really not the iconic character of the series because he's not an ape. The iconic character is Cornelius, played by Roddy McDowall, and arguably his lookalike son Caesar, also played by Roddy McDowall. So this visage is kind of the iconic ape character, whether it's Caesar or Cornelius. and the humans, they're just kind of there. I mean, in other words, the first film is from the humans' point of view, coming into this world. And just like in the novel, they don't realize that they're on the same planet, except in the future. The book has a very interesting ending where he's fixing the rocket ship and he goes back and he's thinking he goes back to Earth, but it's going to be an Earth in the future. And one of two things happen. Either I can't remember, and or it's unclear. He comes back to Earth in the future. Yeah, that's the gist of it. He comes back to Earth in the future. He was on a planet so like Earth that they called it Soror, or sister planet. He returns to Earth in that same future, and when he disembarks from his plane, he's greeted by an ape who, in clothing, who ushers him into a car, says hello. I guess the ape's expecting it to be another ape. So the implication is that he's been gone so long, and it's so inevitable that Earth itself also in the future will become a planet of the apes like Soror. It could also possibly be read that he never left, like in the books. Perhaps he's at a near future time from the events of his stay on Soror, and it's still Earth, and but he realizes it's Earth. But I'm not sure. I can't remember how detailed the novel is about like the space-time coordinates and all that kind of stuff. The movies have a lot of the science fiction, double talk, micro, babble, kind of techno babble about it, and it's pretty convincing. I'm not saying it's quantum. Well, it's probably closer to quantum mechanics than real physics, but quantum mechanics is real physics, but it's a whole nother argument here. The accepted laws of physics, but by that token, there would be no time travel anyway. So, much less to the past. So, regardless of what happens in Avengers Endgame, we don't have a Tony Stark here to figure it out. So it's interesting because the Tim Burton Planet of the Apes in 2002, they adapt the ending from the novel. Same thing happens to Marky Mark's character, Leo, and what a bland character. What a horrible movie. It really is. It's in my top 5 most hated movies of all time. What I would call my top 5 worst films of all time. Tim Burton's Planet of the Apes it's in there. It might be number 1 or 2. It's high up there. It's pretty much unwatchable garbage and excrement. But not just because it's a terrible adaptation. I've talked about this in a previous video, the WandaVision, I think. Does it work as an adaptation, and does it work as a standalone work? So as an adaptation, Burton's Planet of the Apes is a piece of shit. Except for that ending, because they could not top Rod Serling's twist ending from the original. So they weren't even going to try. So they took the twist ending from the book. Other than that, as an adaptation of the material, it's a mess, an absolute fucking mess. And as a movie on its own right, it's even far worse than that. Like I said, to me, it's virtually unwatchable. I mean, occasionally, Helena Bonham Carter and under the ape makeup as Zira, Ari or whatever. It's really Zira, but they changed her name. It's a reimagining. It's not a remake. That was another thing I hated about that thing, was that Burton got so defensive about the fact that nobody wanted a remake of the original. And so he popularized, I don't think he coined it, but he popularized the term reimagining in films. He's like, it's a reimagining, not a remake. And he's very kind of, pretentious anyway. And he's really annoying. And in other words, it's like, okay, so it has the same title, the same premise, some aspects of the same plot, but it's not a remake. Not a remake at all. That's all coincidental. It's a reimagining. So in other words, they went back and Burton went back to the very beginning of the concept. Not even back to the adaptation of Pierre Boulle's novel. Just the very skeleton of the concept. The astronaut goes to this planet where talking apes are the dominant species. And there's time travel involved, sort of, toward the end. He took that and he reimagined it. In other words, what he imagined was that he could do it better, do a better job than Boole, a better job than Serling or Paul Dane, who wrote the other movies, which is, a joke. But his ego is pretty damn enormous. Anyone who's seen Kevin Smith's stand-up routines talking about his experiences with Tim Burton on the aborted Superman Lives, that will give you some insight into how much disdain Burton actually has for a lot of the fantasy material he adapts. How he kind of looks down on it like it's kitsch and treats it that way. And that happens to hook with an audience. A lot of people like the fact Batman 1989 is kitschy. When it came out, we didn't think it was kitsch, but we were young, we were stupid, and we didn't have any good feature film superhero adaptations except the first couple Supermans. So to us, Batman 1989 was dark and brooding and influenced by Frank Miller's The Dark Knight, and actually, it was really very campy and cheesy in so many ways. I mean, Nicholson was having a blast, but he was phoning it in, and he made a fortune phoning it in. And like Marlon Brando on the first Superman film, he got an ironclad contract to get a certain percentage of all future proceeds of the film. So that made him even more fabulously wealthy. Now, I love Jack Nicholson. I don't like him as the Joker. I did at the time, but looking back, I do like his costumes, but the makeup and face, I don't particularly care for the way that they did him. And his personality's fine, whatever. Michael Keaton is still my favorite Bruce Wayne and Batman, though. Oddly enough, I think Burton hit it with that. The fact that this guy didn't have to be a muscle-bound hunk just because he was already rich and fortunate. But he didn't have to be that to learn how to fight. He could be a smaller guy and wear lifts in his shoes like Rorschach in The Watchmen and still pull it off with the kind of armor. And that armor that Batman wore, rubbery, leathery, that influenced all the superhero movies going forward up to today. That was the blueprint for all of that idea. So I think in the conception of that character, Batman, Bruce Wayne, as realized by Michael Keaton and Tim Burton, was brilliant. I just think the movie around it is just kind of silly, but important. It's one of those things that kind of had to happen because it's a landmark. But Burton blew it with Planet of the Apes. I mean, he killed all my goodwill I ever had toward him with that. And I like a couple of his films, grudgingly. I like Ed Wood. I like Edward Scissorhands somewhat. I like Batman Returns okay. I think it's a lot better than the first one. Other than that, I've seen all but a couple of Burton's films, and to be real honest, I'm just not a fan. But 30 years ago, I was a big fan. Beetlejuice is okay, I guess. But again, you got Michael Keaton, who's doing a memorable turn. Those two worked well together. So, what does all this have to do with Planet of the Apes? Well, like I said, the perception of Planet of the Apes by, I guess, the millennial generation and younger is, if they're just looking at stuff that's contemporary with their childhood and young adulthood, their weaning years, it's going to be colored by that Tim Burton film, and then especially by the trilogy of films that came later. And I've almost forgot the names of them, like Dawn and Rise and War, I think, are the three. Of the Planet of the Apes, whatever. The first one is fairly good. The character is Caesar, but it's not. He is destined to be the leader of this revolution, and they take over the world, where the apes, eventually take over the world. There's no time paradox. There's no his parents come from that future in order to make it happen. So there's no time paradox like there is, and which that's even in Burton's movie. And the novel. So it's the first one to dispense with the time travel, time warp, the astronaut in space motif completely. Instead, it deals with advanced science on Earth in the modern day, and James Franco is like a scientist, and he is experimenting on Caesar, and eventually Caesar becomes as intelligent, if not more so, than him. And uh, there's some good material in there. Um, I don't know though. I mean, the apes look okay, but I couldn't get used to their new look. I know they're supposed to look more like real apes, but they're CGI, so they kind of end up looking less like real apes than the old show, than the old films. Because Greystoke, Legend of Tarzan of the Apes, that film, Rick Baker created Tarzan's ape family, and they were all costumes, but they looked exactly like real apes. So surely they could have gotten money to do that and maybe just had the background apes be CGI, just like the background apes in the old series kind of just had the most basic makeup. They weren't fully developed their features. So it's kind of funny sometimes if you look at those shots, they they look like ape zombies. But um, so anyway, those movies were fine, and whatever. But the second one I didn't like, and the third one I couldn't finish. So it was really just a matter of that really was the law of diminishing returns. That was attempting an arc of change and progress, but again, it was weighted down by a lot of canned, cliched characterizations, a lot of obligatory action sequences, and some bad CGI, and just other than Caesar, there's not a whole lot of passion in any of the characters, human or ape. Franco's character, a little in the first one. Uh, Franco and Caesar in the first of that series is slightly similar to the dynamic between Armando and Caesar in Conquest of the Planet of the Apes, where Armando knows that Caesar's the only intelligent ape, and he's keeping it secret. And he even sacrifices his life to keep it secret. So, how do I rate these movies, and what's great about them, and is there anything else in the plot you need to know about? The basic plot is just this. From what the timeline and my babbling, you may have already discerned a lot of it, and you've probably already seen them, and if not, you should see all of them. So, but because I know a lot of people, like under the age of say 40, have never seen these movies, or maybe the first one, but not the whole series. Or they're like, I like the first one, but then the rest are silly. But that's not true. It's a solid, strong series. The fifth one is the weakest, and it is the most geared originally toward children as far as the action and the makeup, because it caught on with kids, the Ape series, when they were shown on television in 1974. So Battle is in that vein, but like I said, to the credit of the people who made this edition, the theatrical one, which is slightly edgier, is on there as the accepted current version, just like with Conquest. Um, but yeah, they're all good. To me, it did take me many years to like Battle, but I do like it now. To me, the first four are all brilliant in different ways and for different reasons, maybe. Um, Taylor comes to this planet, and he's the only living astronaut. He's captured by the talking apes. He's experimented on. He's poked and prodded by the scientists. It's a classic story, and eventually he gains his freedom and goes into the Forbidden Zone, which Cornelius had theorized existed and had remnants of an ancient pre-ape civilization. And of course, Taylor realizes that they're humans, and would an ape have a human doll? And Zaius, the asshole, contrarian character of our story, says, yes, I've always known about man. He's been keeping this a secret. I've always known about man. and how his brutality outstrips his conscience. I'm paraphrasing. Beware the beast man. He will make of the earth a inferno. Again, I'm paraphrasing, but that's the gist of it. So they send Taylor and Nova. They let free and they go in. Nova is the primitive female because the other humans don't talk. They're kind of regressed, and Taylor's like the only really intelligent one. So Nova's very easy on the eyes and very compliant and kind of feisty too. And he does teach her to talk a little bit. But they go off, and Zaius says he may not like what he will find. And he finds the Statue of Liberty shattered in half, jutting up from the beach, which used to be the coast, I guess, Manhattan Island. So they're on Manhattan Island. So the Forbidden Zone, I guess, is Manhattan Island. What's left of it in the future. And, then the classic, much parodied, I'm home. I was here all along. You finally did it. You maniacs. You blew it all to hell. God damn you all to hell. This was a G movie. Classic, really. Still classic. I finally saw Planet of the Apes at the theater in one of those. I can't remember the name of that program that is sometimes done in conjunction with TCM. TCM, yes. I just can't remember the name. It's something pictures. It'll come to me. But basically, they do repertory and presentations of movies that have already been out, or classic movies, or special presentations or anniversaries of films. So they did the Planet of the Apes, and I happened to see it in a theater, in a multiplex in 2017 with my dear friend Tim McLean and some other cats, and it was amazing. And the humor and the cynical humor in the movie, the younger people were laughing. The screenplay is strong. It holds up. It still has that wit. Probably the same reason that Serling's Twilight Zone remains so popular. It's super watched on Netflix by younger people. Over more so than the 3 remake TV shows that have come out in subsequent generations. So the second movie, like I said, Heston didn't want to do one, but he finally agreed to make a guest appearance, and James Franciscus plays this other astronaut, and he comes up into the same future. Somehow he goes on the same route, through the time warp, and they explain that later. They call it the Hassline curve. They mention that in the first movie and the second movie. In the third movie, we meet the real Hassline who theorized about it, a scientist, but we'll get to that. So Franciscus lands here. He meets Nova, and they go looking for Taylor. They go into the city, so they're actually in some of New York City, and they get to where I guess the tunnels were, the subway tunnels, and that's when Brent, Franciscus' character, that's when Brent realizes he's on future Earth. He doesn't get as dramatic as Heston, but he's a little shocked. And this time around, him and Nova are caught in this war between the apes, led by Zaius, and this new character, General Ursus, who's also a now iconic character played by James Gregory, who spouts all kinds of memorable lines, about war and everything. And they're fighting against these mutants that live underground. And the atomic bomb that wiped out humanity's civilization and eventually allowed the apes who were becoming intelligent to come up and reclaim or claim the Earth in the original timeline, because it gets a little altered with the time paradox. They're these mutants. They're descendants of humans, but they're not humans. They're mutants, and they worship the atomic bomb, and it's very droll and weird, and they play these organ hymns to the bomb and their allegiance to the bomb and the holy fallout, and they look kind of like humans, but they take off their masks and they're really pretty much they look like people who've been skinned, not with all the skin taken off their face like in Hellraiser. Um, and Brent finally finds Taylor, and he's kind of he's been imprisoned in the middle of this fracas, and there is a live atomic bomb left. The one they worship in the church is still armed, and accidentally, but very fittingly, Taylor, upon expiring from being shot by the apes, he triggers the doomsday uh, scenario, and the world is ended. And that's would be the end of the series, you would think. However, they do a little retcon and establish, and that's fit into the timeline and exactly where it happens in between the first two movies here. This character named Milo is like a more brilliant scientist than Cornelius and Zero, and he somehow retrofits the remains of Taylor's rocket ship. So this kind of echoes the ending of the book too, where Taylor it does manage to get the ship operational again. Well, in the book, it's Ulysses Maru gets it operational, and so Milo takes Cornelius and Zero with them to the past, and they escape the explosion that destroys Earth. So when they come to the present, they're not going to tell anyone that they're from the future. They're not going to tell anyone the Earth is destroyed. They're not going to tell anyone that apes rule man. Uh, eventually it comes out, yeah, they're from the future, but it seems like they're from another planet. But this Cat Hosline, this physicist, also turns out to be kind of a eugenicist, and he says that if these two intelligent apes breed, they're going to create a race that's going to supplant humanity, and they put it all together and realize that this is what's going to happen. That by the apes escaping their future, uh, which came about in one fashion, and coming into our present or near future, uh, it's almost like a fulfilling a prophecy in a time loop where they make sure it happens. Of course, Hosline is trying to stop it, and so baby Milo is kind of like Jesus, and he's sacrificed. And there's even talk about that, like King Herod, and Hosline is kind of becomes more like a Nazi. And he's played by Hans Gudegast, who I've talked about before on this show as Eric Braeden from Young and the Restless, but he was still Hans Gudegast then. So they got a German guy to even play Hosline, who was a German character, fittingly. He's probably an ex-Nazi, really the character. Operation Paperclip or whatever. So, they kill the baby and they kill Cornelius and Zira, and that seems to be the tragic ending. But Armando, who had given them shelter, the family, the ape family, shelter in a circus, played by Ricardo Montalban, years before Fantasy Island. Armando has the real baby. They were switched. And already the baby can say mama. And so jump forward 20 years into the next film, Conquest of the Planet of the Apes, taking place in the 1990s. And they're in Los Angeles, and it's like super high tech and everything, and supposedly near futuristic. And they have this insane governor named Breck. I guess he's the governor of California, which I guess is appropriate, because that's coming off the heels of Ronald Reagan in real life, who was also an insane governor of California. And apes have now become slaves. They almost can stand erect. They wear clothes, just I guess as some kind of labeling device. I don't know why really they wear clothes, but they have chains, and they have, due to their intelligence, they've been able to learn how to do tasks of all different kinds to serve society. And the reason for this is because someone had brought back from one of the exploratory space missions a disease, and it killed all dogs and cats, killed a lot of kinds of animals. So humans no longer had companion animals. So they took apes as their companion animals. And I guess this took place shortly after Escape from the Planet of the Apes on that timeline, maybe in the late 1970s. So within a generation, these apes can, are in clothes and they can walk semi upright. They can't talk, but they're very intelligent. Um, it's a little real unrealistic, but it's interesting because they had already alluded to, I believe they had alluded in Escape from the Planet of the Apes, the thing about the pets dying off and the apes, becoming whatever and evolving. But, we're talking about a time period of, Taylor leaves Earth in 1972 and he gets there in what did I say, like 2954, 3954. So yeah, in 2,000 years, they could definitely evolve. But this has them evolving like hyper speed. And what it kind of does is Caesar, who was Milo, the baby Milo, Caesar is he's their leader. He takes over. He manages to. He's so mad about Armando's death and the servitude of the apes that he basically starts like a terrorist movement, and you have kind of like I said, like an allegory of Black Revolution that was going on. It's kind of like the spook who sat by the door, where they start doing these kind of terrorist activities and sabotage in California. And Breck, of course, is getting more and more unhinged and crazy and Nazi-like himself, and his right-hand man, played by Severin Darden, is also very Nazi-ish, and it kind of shows America being consumed by this militaristic, pseudo-utopian, but controlling society, surveillance society. And that's 1990s as depicted in a 1970s movie, but it's really like the 2020s that we're living right now. There are a lot of Governor Brecks running things now. And so Caesar takes the planet. He takes the city and the state, but the planet's next because he talks about in every city around the world this uprisings will start. Now, at the time, they don't really ever explain any kind of science fiction rationale for why that happens. But there is a scientist, Rupert Sheldrake, who I first read about in the Animal Man comic books by Grant Morrison. And he has an evolutionary theory called the morphogenetic field, where there's like a common field, like a psychic electromagnetic energy field within species. And so if and they did tests, like a worker ant is trained to go through, maybe an ant is not it's too primitive. A worker rat, okay, he's not a worker, but a rat in a lab is trained to go through a difficult maze that no other rat has ever run through. And then within days or weeks, a rat in another country can do it too. So that species is sharing that racial memory, that collective unconsciousness. And that's what I think happens. And that's what I believe is the justification scientifically, or some would say pseudoscientifically. It just depends on how much you accept parallel evolution theories and quantum mechanics and all this stuff. But I find it fascinating and plausible, but that's just me. So that kind of explains, to my satisfaction, how in countries around the world they'll be rising up tomorrow, as Caesar says, and that's what happens. So then we skip like another hard to discern how many years because we don't know how long lived Caesar is meant to be. That's not clear how long the evolved apes live. What their lifespan is in years. We'll say anywhere from, well, I guess we'll say like 10 to 15 years maybe, because he's married Lisa, who is the ape that first talks at the end of Conquest, and she says no. But anyway, she can talk fine by battle. So everything's kind of come down. They've got this whole culture. You still have remnants from uh, the past culture. Breck's right hand man, played by Severin Darden, is now the leader of these kind of crazy Nazis, and I think there's some mutants thrown in there too. And I don't know. Maybe the atomic bomb went off in between the two movies. I can't remember that. Believe it or not, because like I said, I've seen Battle much fewer times than the others. Um, but there's some fascinating stuff that happens in Battle, and that's where you get the phrase, ape shall never kill ape. And John Huston plays the lawgiver who is spoken about in the prior movies, and there's a statue of him in the future, which topples in Beneath the Planet of the Apes. And John Huston actually plays the lawgiver with that great voice of his, and he kind of puts the edict out. So there's lots to enjoy in the last movie too, and like I said, the super fast evolution is kind of bizarre, but um, it's worthy. It is worthy. It's a little more of an action movie than the others, though they had plenty of action. Um, the thing about Lisa saying no at the Conquest, I just wanted to say this real quick because I mentioned this earlier. This is one of the greatest things about these movies being re-released in these versions. Is that Conquest of the Planet of the Apes is ending where the apes are getting ready to grind Breck's head into powder with their rifles that they've confiscated. And Lisa says no. And then Caesar gives this weird speech about how we who are not human can afford to be humane. And basically, there's not going to be more blood spilled, but tomorrow we'll wake to a planet of the apes, which is pretty cool. But what really happened was they edited that together. They cobbled it together. They didn't even reshoot it. It got such a negative test response from audiences because the original ending, they do destroy Breck. And, you don't really see Breck, destroyed, but I mean, I think you see some blood on their rifles and you hear some grunts and, it's pretty chaotic and vile and hectic. And then Caesar revels in this, and that's when he announces the Planet of the Apes. So there's no kind of backing away from this. It's like this human leader has to fall so that this ape leader will rise. And that's now the official version, and I'm glad because it's a much better ending, and it's really incredible, powerful. So that's the series. I'm not going to get into offshoots of the movies and all the pop culture phenomena. I touched on some of that already. But that's the series. That's the box set. And I even talked about the later movies and my feelings about them. So that's kind of the deal. I will give a real quick footnote that there was a TV series in the mid to late 70s. Well, only lasted like one season, called Planet of the Apes. And Roddy McDowall was in it too, but he played a character named Galen, and he befriended two astronauts, Burden, and I forgot the other one's name, Burke maybe, and I think Ron Harper played one of them. And so it rewrote the whole story. Instead of Taylor and Brent, there's these two cats, and they wear a lot more clothes than Taylor and Brent. I don't know, maybe they weren't as buff or cut as Heston and Franciscus, but they they're not very engaging leads, and silly things happen. I do believe Dr. Zayas though is a character, but it's not played by Maurice Evans anymore that I remember. Um, but other than that, it's just like it's that episodic. It's exactly what uh, Heston feared. It's the Andy Hardy series. Just every week, watch Galen help the hapless humans escape from an evil Dr. Zayas. That probably really was a tagline from TV Guide. I don't remember though, but anyway, I don't like it. There was a cartoon also, which had a slightly altered continuity also, but it was a little more fun at least. But these five films to me are like the canon. They're like the canon of filmed versions of Pierre Boulle's creation. And this set, it's hard to find. Obviously, it's hard to find in mint condition, but damn it, I've got it. And I want to thank everybody for listening. because I've been wanting to show you guys this for a long time, and just talk about the series, how much I love it, and how much care went into this box to make it like a definitive apes experience for us fanatics. So thank you, and I will see you in more videos in the near future.